One of the most important and one of the most famous men in history has the name of Moses. He is someone that we identify with the nation of Israel at the very birth of that nation. When Moses was born, his people were slaves in Egypt. And when he became a man, he was the man that God chose to be his prophet, to lead the nation of Israel out of Egyptian bondage. Let's spend some time thinking about and talking about the beginning of the story of Moses today. The story of Exodus picks up at the end of what we find in the first book of the Bible. Leaving Genesis, we have been introduced to all of the great patriarchs, the names that become a part of the rest of the Bible history: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and his 12 sons. Jacob's name is changed to Israel by God as he moves back to that land that God promised him. And he became Israel. Now, in the closing chapters of Genesis, Joseph, the youngest of the children until Benjamin was born, but he was the favorite son of his father. A great deal of jealousy among the brothers led them to selling him into Egyptian slavery. And God took care of Joseph while he was there. Joseph was a very good young man, very faithful to God. And everything that Joseph did prospered. And God gave him the gift of prophecy. And by means of that gift, he had helped first his jailer, and then later the Pharaoh himself. Whenever God gave him a dream, Joseph told him the meaning of it. And it was a dream in which God prepared Pharaoh and all of Egypt for a coming time of abundance, 7 years, and then a time of scarcity, a famine for 7 years. That was going to be a major disaster throughout that region. So that Joseph, by revealing that to the Pharaoh, spared that nation, actually more than that, made them the greatest nation in the world of that time. Pharaoh had the wisdom to appoint Joseph to administer all of the resources of Egypt during the years of plenty, so that everybody had to come to Joseph in order to survive, and eventually his own brothers showed up. They didn't know who he was, but eventually Joseph revealed himself to them. He forgave them, and they all the family, some 70 of them, then moved to Egypt. Joseph had great fame. His God had great fame. The Israelites had great fame for a while. Now, Exodus picks up some centuries later, and things have really changed. All of that great and glorious past is now past and forgotten. We're going to begin reading in the book of Exodus, in the first chapter, in the basically the 6th verse, although the first verse tells us of the names of the sons who went down there. And verse 6, now Joseph and all his brothers and that whole generation died. Okay, this is what we just said. But the Israelites were fruitful. Here is what happened in the previous centuries. They were fruitful and prolific. They multiplied and became very numerous, that the land was so very numerous that the land was filled with them. When God blesses a people and he makes them strong, he does so by means of fruitful harvest, not just of the fields, but also of children. No nation is strong without children. No nation becomes prosperous and strong without children. I know that we've heard for the last 100 years that if you have a large family, if you have too many children, that will reduce your prosperity because you'll have too many mouths to feed. That's the theory. It sounds very logical. The thing is, we're not quite as wise as God is. God knows what he's doing when he gives us children. We need to be wise enough and to value what God has given us. Well, reading on down then, as a result, we find that in verse 8, a new king who knew nothing of Joseph rose to power in Egypt. He said to his people, "See, the Israelite people have multiplied and become more numerous than we are. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them to stop their increase. Otherwise, in time of war, they too may join our enemies to fight against us and so leave the land." The problem with that is that this king, we don't know exactly why. Maybe it's a new dynasty. Time has passed. We know that in times of prosperity, and God clearly prospered Egypt and made them the most prosperous and powerful nation in the world under the leadership and administration of Joseph the Israelite. And the Israelites lived in the land of Goshen, there near the delta or the mouth of the river Nile. And no doubt they had an impact on the whole population. They knew the God of Israel. Now, how well the Israelites and the Egyptians conserved that knowledge, we know that they forgot an awful lot. They became idolaters, all of them did. But there was still some knowledge of that God. There was no reason for this Pharaoh to fear the Israelites, who had made them great and powerful. Nevertheless, this is what he thought. They are prospering because God prospered them. The Egyptians, on the other hand, who were given to their idols, God did not give them as many children. I don't even know if they wanted children that bad. Apparently not. Idolatrous people tend to be self-absorbed. They tend to be carnal, fleshly minded. As a result, they don't have the homes they should have. They don't treasure their children like they should. In all idolatrous countries, there is a scarcity of children. So what happened here finally was that the Israelites are becoming greater and stronger because of their children. And the Egyptians fear them. And they think, we've got to stop. We've got to institute some kind of birth control. In this case, their idea of birth control was to instruct the midwives who helped the Israelite women to murder the Israelite baby boys. They could let the girls live. There was always a possibility that an Egyptian man might marry an Israelite woman. But this was the idea, to put an end to or to decrease the amount of young men who might become soldiers later, and the fear was turn against the Egyptians. The problem with this is not birth control, this is murder. A lot of today is of what is called birth control in America and throughout the world is exactly that. In nations that do not believe in the God of the Bible, and a people that have forgotten that knowledge, then there is a willingness to take all measures to prevent the birth, including the killing of the baby before it's born. That's called abortion. Even some of the medicines that are prescribed to prevent conception, in effect, allow there to be a conception, but an inability for that conceived baby to thrive within the womb, and then there is a death. In any case, there are parallels between the modern practices of birth control and the birth control of the Egyptians. And if you will follow with me as I read verse 11, accordingly, they set supervisors over the Israelites to oppress them with forced labor. Thus they had to build for Pharaoh the garrison cities of Pithom and Ramesses. Yet the more they oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread, so that the Egyptians began to loathe the Israelites. So the Egyptians reduced the Israelites to cruel slavery, making life bitter for them, and with hard labor at mortar and brick and all kinds of field work, cruelly oppressed in all their labor. And all of this oppression, though, the Israelites continue to thrive. The Israelites continue to multiply and to spread and to be even more powerful. Many of us today feel like that if there is the danger of oppression, if we anticipate a bad economy, if we anticipate a time of war and difficulty, that it's best not to have children. That's a mistake. As we see here, that God made them stronger and greater even under oppression. The oppression is a test. It's a test of our caliber, of our character, of our resolve to fulfill our purpose here upon the earth, of serving our God and being fruitful and giving glory to our God. Well, the king of Egypt then told the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was called Shiphrah and the other Puah, when you act as midwives for the Hebrew women, look on the birth stool. If it is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, she may live. The midwives, however, feared God. How about that? They did not do as the king of Egypt had ordered them, but let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this, allowing the boys to live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women," and I can believe that. He said they said they are robust and give birth before the midwife arrives. That again indicates the blessing of God. God strengthened the women in their oppression. Throughout the Bible, we notice that. God notices when his children suffer. He notices when anybody suffers. God is their champion, and God strengthens them. Therefore, God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very numerous. And because the midwives feared God, God built up families for them. You understand? He's saying that these Egyptian midwives, whatever their other beliefs, they did fear the true God. And they did obey the will of that God. And as a result, God built up families for them. Pharaoh then commanded all his people, "Throw into the Nile every boy that is born, but you may let all the girls live." That's the kind of thing that we're dealing with here in the context of the birth of Moses. Lord willing, we would like to spend another period of time and study of the beginning of Moses. What a wonderful statement of the providence and care of God, that God knows when we suffer, and God knows when we do what's right, when it's hard to do that, and God will take care of us. God bless you.